Good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery. It's a pleasure to visit with you this morning. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time at 8 o'clock Central or a minute or so before. Talk tactics, strategies, tips, techniques, share some success stories, and we're here to support you. Our distribution partners fall into two different categories primarily now. We have affiliates and we have our white label partners. A lot of what we talk about now is really more oriented towards our white label partners because they're in a more leadership role, they're earning more income, but the point is they're actually working with the clients, whereby affiliates just simply refer in. So affiliates, frankly, don't need to know much. They just generate the lead and submit it in. This topic, I guess, is overdue because as we work with clients, these are some strategies and techniques and tips that we've been aware of, but I think maybe we've not spent enough time getting you aware of some of these strategies and tips and tactics. So we're going to go through a number of them today and would love to get your feedback as we go through them. And again, your feedback comes through the question and answer box there on Zoom. So this isn't changing what we do. You know, the big picture is the same, right? We're technical advisors. We have a 4-week or 4-module process. We take clients through to build financial literacy, help them build their loan package, figure out what source or sources of capital is best for them, help them meet the underwriting criteria, guarantee them funding. You know, all of that is the same. Here, we're just going to talk about some maybe overlooked or less frequently understood strategies to make that happen even faster. Okay, so first one is creating W-2 income. So we're right here. Now again, I don't mind if you have questions or concerns or issues with what I described, just give feedback and we'll work through it. So at first glance, you might think, well, if I just went and created W-2 income, that's not legal or that's not appropriate or that's not authentic or I could get in trouble. It's just the opposite of that, right? If we're working with entrepreneurs, we have the ability to create our own W-2 income. So I know in my world, every Friday, I get paid a direct deposit through W-2 income. Taxes withheld appropriately, filed through, we use QuickBooks Payroll. You can do the same and all of your clients can do the same. So the topic this topic is relevant because while different sources of capital have different underwriting criteria, you know that now, we've talked about that consistently, some do like to see W-2 income, and you could be and should be a W-2 employee of your company. And one would argue that once you become a W-2 employee of your company, you're no longer self-employed, because a lot of the world doesn't like, a lot of the finance world doesn't like the tag self-employed. They see that as risky. And so a lot of us that are entrepreneurs maybe aren't as financially literate and think, well, you know, I own my own company. I can't get W-2 income. Well, it's exactly the opposite of that. You should be most likely taking W-2 income out of your business. By taking a steady W-2 check, you'll actually lower your taxes. You might say, what? Well, and you can talk to your accountant about this, but essentially, if you take a reasonable salary, that portion will be subject to employment taxes like Medicare and workers' comp, Social Security, what have you. However, then what's above that would be considered profit distributions. And if you set it up right, then that portion is not subject to employment taxes. But we're not here to talk about taxes right now. We're here to talk about how to accelerate access to capital. So what we need to be of the mindset is we want to teach and coach. Those of you that are mentors, this is relevant. If you're just an affiliate, just listen because it doesn't matter to you. But you want to encourage entrepreneurs to set up a payroll service. And we don't have any financial interest with QuickBooks payroll. That's who we use. That's what I'm familiar with. But you can do ADP or whatever company you want. But encourage entrepreneurs to set up a payroll service, start paying themselves preferably weekly. And guess what happens? After 2 weeks, we've got 2 paycheck stubs. Then they can come back to us and we have access to more types of capital then. So don't misinterpret, because you're making a mistake if you hear me wrong. I'm not saying that all sources of capital require this. That's not true, and that's not even what I'm insinuating. What I'm saying is that some quick sources of capital like to see W-2 income, and I'm showing you how to legally, ethically, and appropriately create W-2 income in 2 to 3 weeks. So let's pause there. Who has questions? We got a bunch of people on training today, which is great. It's good to have a big crowd on Friday. Does anyone have questions on creating W-2 income? All right, well, Scott with 1T is asking, well, what if there's no money? Well, I understand that clients are coming to us to access capital, to raise capital. I'm clear on that. But that is not an excuse for being broke. Right. And so we've talked about there's 3 ways that we can get capital to start or grow a business: debt-based, equity-based, and earned income. Sometimes, and some of our distribution partners will fall into this, which is rather disheartening, is there tends to be sometimes this excuse of, well, I'm broke, so I need to borrow money. Well, maybe we do need money, and debt is one of the 3 ways, but that does not excuse the need for earned income. And so we'll talk more about earned income as we move on down the page. But just because they're a brand new startup, you and I, Scott with 1T, you and I could go start a lawn care company today. And then today's Friday, but by Monday, we could be setting up payroll and pulling W-2 income by Monday. And 2 weeks thereafter, 2 to 3 weeks thereafter, then we have 2 to 3 paycheck stubs. So there's not an excuse on this. This is, I think, good management, and it's certainly going to increase quick access to capital. Anyone else have questions on this simple bullet? And again, we're going to work with the clients, in the white label program, as well as our normal, of course, we're working with them on the funding strategies and preparation. So I'm technically not pushing this burden off to you. I just want you to understand some of these tactics that maybe you're not familiar with, and maybe you are. Okay, so that was number 1, creating W-2 income. We good there? All right. I'm going to make this a little larger here. So now we're on selling accounts receivable. I realize not all small businesses have accounts receivable, but all of you that are white label partners, you will have accounts receivable, right? Because what you're doing, whether it be if you're using the access to capital version with no upfront cost to the client, or the capital ready version, which they do pay the refundable deposit up front, whichever way, you have an agreement. And we've provided you a sample of an agreement that you can use and modify. But unless you're really changing it up, then they are promising to go through the process to raise capital, and they're promising to pay you some sort of performance fee. A lot of you are charging around 10%, some more, some less. But regardless, once that client, let's go through an example here. So we got David on the line. And David, thanks for getting up early. I know you're on the West Coast. So let's say that David signs up. I'm a white label partner, and I run into David, and maybe at the chamber meeting or church, and David signs up with me through my white label access to capital program. So I'm going to execute an agreement with David. And again, I tell you, as I mentioned, we provide a template that our white label partners can use. So now David and I have an existing written agreement. And I've made certain promises to him. He's made certain promises to me as a white label partner. And so now there's an AR, an accounts receivable, created. Maybe you're not familiar with this, but you can then sell that. So you don't have to wait for David to go through his capital raise for you to get paid that performance fee. There's a concept called factoring. And so we started to sell, it's like selling notes, if you will, selling accounts receivable notes. We started to do this, and you could do this too. And so granted, you're going to get a reduced amount. So let's say that David has promised to pay you 10% of a minimum of $100,000 capital raise. So you know that David owes you $10,000. Now, the trigger for payment hasn't occurred yet. So you're not asking David, hey, send me over 10,000, because you've not earned it yet. But contractually, you know that David's going to pay you $10,000 by going through the process. And if he doesn't, he's legally responsible for doing so. So you could turn around and sell that note, sell that agreement to a third party, commonly referred to as factoring. They're not going to give you the full 10,000 for it, because they know that maybe David's squirrely and he won't pay, or something else could happen. Plus they want to make a profit, but they'll give you some fraction of that. Well, that can accelerate your cash flow. And that's not just unique to our white label model. You could offer you could be a manufacturer and you could factor invoices. So selling accounts receivable is another strategy. And so we've gotten real serious about this. We're getting ready to sell a lot. It might shock you, but we're about ready to sell a bunch of these, and we've retained legal counsel that's going to do the collections on any of the items, any of the receivables that are not paid as agreed. So we're talking about strategies to quickly generate access to more capital, not replacing our overall model, but just talking about some other tips and strategies that maybe you hadn't considered. Creating W-2 income, we talked about first, and then now we're talking about selling your accounts receivable. Anyone have questions on selling your AR factoring? Okay. Next, creating fast cash flow. We talked about there's 3 ways, and only 3 ways a small business can access capital to start or grow: debt, equity, earned income. Earned income is awesome, right? Selling some product or some service to a client, generating more revenue than expense. Well, that is valuable because of the 3 C's: creditworthiness, cash flow, and collateral. Cash flow, we can jump up cash flow for 60 to 90 days, 2 to 3 months. And that enough is qualification to go get funding, because it's one of the 3 C's. Now, they could go create fast cash flow, I guess, by selling more muffins real quickly, or selling more mufflers if they could. But a lot of the small businesses that come to us, I was talking to one of our distribution partners on the phone yesterday, and he's got a full-time job, and he's not generating any income. And I asked him, well, why are you generating no income? Well, I need funding. Okay, let's go through that. What is it you need funding for? And frankly, his answer wasn't strong. There was nothing that was keeping him, more funding is great, and we're working on that, and so forth. But it's really just an excuse. Oh, I'm just waiting for funding to make any sales. Well, is that really necessary? Is there not anything that you can do to generate earned income while you're working towards your funding? Because it's going to help you get more funding and qualify for funding. Oh, I'm just waiting for funding. Well, that's a piss poor approach. So creating cash flow is a good thing. It helps bank balances and bank statements, financial statements, shows that we can service more debt so we can borrow more money. But none of that is my point right now. My point right now is that alone is one of the 3 C's, and we can use that to qualify for more funding. If they can't go sell more muffins or mufflers, they can always become a white label partner, right? We don't charge anything up front to become a white label partner. This isn't some self-serving recruitment tool. I'm just explaining entrepreneurs need to focus on generating earned income. And I understand that they're coming to us, you and I, to get more capital to do more of that. I'm with you there. But it may be in the meantime, they need to find something creative that they could do. The example I gave that client yesterday is we work with restaurants, restaurant owners quite a bit. And so you could have someone come to us that wants to open a restaurant. Well, that's a big ticket, right? We got to get space and equipment and inventory and staff and all of that. You can't kind of sort of open a restaurant. Well, what we could do is maybe start doing some catering. right? There's some commercial kitchens that we could use for next to nothing and start doing some catering and generate some revenue and generate some branding and generate some awareness. Well, if you're not able to do that with your business, we have a lot of real estate clients. Well, they want to do fix and flips. Well, you can't kind of do a little bit of a fix and flip, right? You got to be able to acquire the property. Well, what are some options? If you're really good at it, maybe you become a consultant and you generate some consulting revenue, teaching other people how to do it while you're getting enough money to be able to get a property. Or you find some other revenue stream that's associated or not associated, and that's the point. This is kind of the ace in the hole for anyone that just needs some cash flow. And for you or for me, I mean, to go earn an adult income and just do it for 60 to 90 days just to get your financials in order is a reasonable strategy. Okay, next bullet. This one seems kind of obvious, but we run into it more often than you might think. Deposit your business income into a business bank account. I was talking to a client just yesterday. We had uploaded his documents into Dropbox and we're going through them, building the loan package. And I said, well, sir, I don't see your business bank statements. And he says, well, I didn't upload them. I said, well, why didn't you upload them? We asked you for them and they're important. Well, there's no money in it. And I said, well, from what I understand, sir, your business is open and operating, right? That's what we've discussed. Oh, yeah. Well, if your business is open and operating and your bank account has no money in it and no transactions, where's the money going? I'm putting it in my personal account. Well, that's not good business. We need to separate personal and business. But the point less about that is we need to show business cash flow because that's going to increase access to capital, and just cash flow deposits could be enough to qualify for certain types of funding. So what did we advise him to do? Well, he had a bank account, but you need a business bank account. And then the obvious thing is, well, let's go ahead and put our business income into our business bank account and let's pay our business expenses out of our business bank account. So a little bit of an obvious one there, but you might be surprised that not everyone has grasped that concept. And then once we've done that, again, we can use that as a funding source. All right, accepting credit cards is really good. We live in a time more than ever of e-commerce transactions, but even if it's not e-commerce, there are some sources of capital that really like just frankly credit card deposits. We show them a couple months of steady credit card deposits, and that can be considered an asset, that can be considered collateral that can allow us to get certain types of funding. But if all we're doing is using PayPal, that's not a true merchant card processor. To leverage this, we need to set up and get a true merchant card account where we're able to accept usually MasterCard, Visa, maybe American Express and Discover, but it's set up as a true merchant card account. We do this through our bank. You can probably go to your bank and get that set up, or any small business owner. We don't sell the service. We're not trying to get in that revenue stream. But I think that some small businesses don't realize that if they were to accept credit cards, that can increase their access to capital. I don't mean just increase getting client money in. I'm talking about using that as collateral, as I referenced above. Okay, any questions there? We were talking to a client yesterday, actually met with a client yesterday, and they had been slow to accept credit cards because they didn't want to pay the credit card fees, because there's fees charged with credit card transactions, merchant card processing fees. Well, what we did for them is we put a tag on the client price. So the clients pay an extra 3% if they pay by credit card. Clients usually don't care that much. And so that way the small business is not absorbing that expense. And now we're able to leverage that as another source of collateral for funding. Okay, any questions so far? All right, we'll keep moving on. If you have any questions, just type it into Q&A. Another is getting a cosigner. And again, sometimes this just seems so obvious, but I was talking to another client yesterday and brought it up to her, and she's like, well, I sure wish you would have brought that up to me before. It's like, oh, well, I guess we didn't make that clear. So we're going to start making that more clear. So if the client, our client themselves don't have strong enough of any of the three C's yet, so we're working on it, what we could do is bring someone to the table that does have one of the three C's. Now, there's a few different ways to structure that. It could be a friend, it could be a family member or another acquaintance, someone from church or from someone you went to high school with, or vendor or what have you. But what you need to do is create a win-win proposition for them. So let's say that my credit wasn't so good, and so I went to Mr. Garcia, who's on the line here. I'd say, Mr. Garcia, I've got this business. I'm looking for some funding, but frankly, right now, my credit profile is not strong enough. What I'd like to do is bring you in, Mr. Garcia, as a business partner. Wouldn't cost any money out of pocket. And here's the deal. You would pitch whatever you wanted to pitch to him. All I need to do is just to have you co-sign on the funding deal. And so then you'd be able to show him your income projections. And so with him having no out-of-pocket expense, just pledging his credit, he expects to earn an extra $80,000 based upon whatever profit distribution you're offering him over the next 6 months, 12 months, 36 months, what have you. So you have to make it worth their while, unless, I guess, they're a family member and they just love you. But the bottom line is we can bring in cosigners and accelerate access to funding or grow the amount of funding. So don't overlook that. And again, we're handling that back end as far as getting the file ready for funding and getting them placed with the sources of capital. We're not pushing that burden off to you, but just to be clear, and maybe it was to you as it is to me, but it's not to everyone, bringing a cosigner in can help. All right, moving on down. Leveraging 401k savings. I did this a fair amount when I worked for the SBA/SBDC, and it's really a good deal because what we can do is leverage retirement savings without using the retirement savings. In other words, it becomes a source of collateral. And so we'll know about the individual's savings position from the SBA Form 413, the personal financial statement that the mentor should be helping them complete in week 1. But that works really well. Not everybody has enough of that, but some people do. So again, we're not saying that all these strategies are going to work for everyone. We're just letting you know that it does work for some. Okay, this last one's a really big deal, and I saved it for last because I think it's overlooked, and we've hinted towards it recently. But so again, there are only 3 ways that an entrepreneur can get access to start or grow a business. Debt, money that they borrow, and there's lots of different types of debt. That's where the 3 C's come into play: creditworthiness, cash flow, and collateral. And we learn about that in week or module 3 of the curriculum. Secondly, there's equity-based capital. Now, that's a generic term, but what that means is someone is reaching into their own personal pocketbook and putting money into the client's business, not as a loan, not expecting to be paid back, because that would be debt, but instead expecting to share in future profits. And so we can help facilitate that. And we work on a number of these deals. There certainly are investors that are looking for opportunities to invest in early stage businesses. There's no doubt about it. And we're not talking about Shark Tank here and doing a dog and pony show, but we are talking about helping match up the investor and the entrepreneur. So there's portals that we can assist in doing that. And frankly, a lot of the prep work that we do with the client in terms of getting ready for a debt-based capital raise with the business plan and the financial projections, while it needs to be altered a little bit from an equity perspective, this is very much real. I know it was earlier in my career, but I had gone out and I was able to raise and it's not a big deal, so I'm not bragging or anything, but I was able to raise over $400,000 from a private investor by meeting with them. I was actually at a Chamber of Commerce kind of trade show, where everybody sets up booths and everybody is just kind of introducing themselves to each other in the community. And I was able to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars from an investor that I met that way. So the key is getting the proposition packaged properly. And so Live Plan that we use for a business plan and financial forecasting is very helpful for that. So getting an investor, it could be elaborate, it could be kind of basic. You could work whatever type of deal you want in terms of what the pitch is, but it is money that's not debt. It's money that doesn't have to be paid back. And it could be set up as a short term. Okay, I'm looking for an investment, but I want to have buyback provisions in 12-month increments over the next 5 years. So they give you $250,000. It goes into your business. You use it the way that you said you would, but if you want to buy them out, that could be written and set at certain triggers. So let's review. The basics of what we do hasn't changed. Today's purpose was just to talk about some overlooks, tactics, and strategies that can help increase access to capital that maybe you hadn't considered. We talked about the importance of creating W-2 income, talked about the opportunity of selling AR, which we're in the process of doing ourselves, creating new cash flow, because earned income is golden, making sure that we're putting our money where it should be going, into the business bank account, using credit card receipts as collateral to access capital, using a cosigner, another person or persons, to help accelerate our access to capital or even increase the amount that we can get. If we have been saving money in a 401k or similar type of retirement plan, there's ways that we can leverage that as collateral. Maybe you didn't realize that, without using the retirement money. And then also using an equity-based capital raise, which I think is commonly overlooked. What questions do any of you have on these different topics that we've talked about? And let me ask specifically, which one of these was most surprising or most interesting or most intriguing to you? Go ahead and type in a response. So Anna Marie and Barry, Beatrice, Bernard, Brian, David, Dion, Joseph, Mark, Quentin, Scott with 1 T, Scott 2 T's, Wayne, William, Will, others. Give me a little bit of feedback. Which of these tactics got your interest or surprised you, or do you find most interesting? So again, the process is the same, and Tony's asking. So we always want to bring the client into a client relationship before we start mentoring, before we start advising. And so usually that's going to be the access to capital variant, where there's no upfront cost, but you certainly can do the capital ready variant of the white label, where they pay the deposit up front, either way. But then we'll go through the 4 modules. Nothing has changed there. What we'll be doing as we're looking at the data that is coming in is looking at any of these opportunities for the client. So it's technically not your burden, Tony, as the mentor, to be an expert in all of this and pitching all of this. But what I did feel like, Tony, was helpful was to go through this to better understand that there are some tactics that a lot of people haven't considered, or even some basics that they're just not following, even though we teach them that, like having a bank account. Okay, any other questions, comments, concern? Okay, Dean's talking about selling AR. Yeah, selling AR is good. And as a white label partner, Dion, this is a big deal. So let's say that you're just doing the norm. You're enrolling 2 new clients a week, Dion, into the white label access to capital program. If you're doing the normal, you're charging them a 10% performance fee, which you don't have to. Remember, you set that. But you know that each of them is promised essentially to pay you $10,000 after a $100,000 capital raise. So if you're doing 2 of those a week, that's $20,000 a week. There's approximately 4 weeks in the month. So you've got $80,000 of accounts receivable coming into your white label partnership each week. And that's just performing at the most minimum level of 2 clients a week. You should and could be doing a lot more than that. So essentially what you maybe have overlooked is you've got $80,000 or more of AR that's building up, and you do not have to wait to collect that from the client. You can sell those. And again, we're in the process of selling millions of dollars, not because we're in a cash flow crunch, just because we'd rather someone else collect it. And so we want to get out of, personally, we want to get out of the role of chasing down client money. It's a distraction. People don't like it. So we did retain yesterday a new law firm, and they are collection hounds, ran by a principal attorney, a partner that's been in collections for over 30 years. He's done a lot of medical collections. Everybody hates that. He's done a lot of repoing of cars. He's really good at not just filing the suits and getting the judgments, but then doing the abstracts afterwards, doing the paycheck garnishments, the bank drafts, so he handles it from beginning to end. So what's the point? There's people that are really aggressive and really good and attorneys at doing that. And so they would love to buy your AR. You get some of the money up front. You don't get all of it. And then they go do all the work, and either the client pays as they're supposed to, or they default. It's called non-performing debt. And then the legal hounds go after them and collect it, and you're distanced from it. Right now, you're not the bad guy. That's what a lot of hospitals do. Right, a lot of hospitals, they don't want to be the ones chasing people down for the unpaid deductibles or copays, because the hospital needs to maintain a good image in the community. So instead, they sell that debt off, and then there's some bastards that are third parties that'll just ruin someone's life for that money, but it's not the hospital now. And so you can sell your accounts receivable at a discount if you want. And then the legal process is very aggressive, but it's only holding clients accountable for what they promised to pay. It's not punishing them. David's asking about the typical percentages. It's going to vary. Factoring is going to vary based upon the type of debt and the strength of debt. And again, we're not a factoring company. We're just helping clients access different sources of capital. So just like David, if you ask me, what would your interest rate be on an SBA loan? I can't quote that because we're not the lender. I can't quote what your fees would be for factoring, but it would be based, of course, based upon the risk of the paper that you're selling. Okay. Yeah, and Dion mentioned the importance of the W-2 income, and this is one of the easiest. I don't want to exaggerate. We're recording this, and the world will listen to it. So I'll be generic and say we can get almost any client funding based upon just this strategy alone in 30 days. So even if they're in a position where none of their 3 C's are so good, and we're working on everything's in process, but they just need some funding short term, short term, maybe to pay their deposit or whatever, or more than that. This is the real deal. And again, there's nothing about what I'm saying, well, in any of these, but especially in this one, that is illegal, unethical, immoral. As a small business owner, you can pay yourself, and you can pay yourself as a W-2 employee. But what you want to do is use a payroll service, because we want to be legally compliant, have the right amount of taxes taken out, and you want to have that set up as a direct deposit. Don't just cut yourself checks, because some lenders will not just confirm that you have a paycheck stub. They may actually go look in your personal account and say, okay, was there a corresponding direct deposit? Because people could try to cheat this. We're not going to try to cheat it, but people could cheat. They could just say, oh, sure, I'm paying myself, and here's some checks that I never cashed. Well, you can see that lenders aren't foolish, and they're going to look for both the paycheck stubs, which are very easy to create, but also they may look for evidence that the money was deposited into the personal account. But that's easy to do. Within 30 days, we can be compliant on this and access capital off of this alone, in addition to everything else. All right, so I think we've covered a lot. Anna Marie talked about the 401k, and I remember one client, we were going after an SBA loan. He was going to start a franchise. Well, he did start a franchise, but at that point, I was working with him, and with the SBA loan to get franchises are some of the easiest businesses to get financing for, because as long as they're on the approved SBA list, we can navigate that process pretty quickly and pretty easily. But the SBA doesn't want to do 100% loan. So this client, his name is Chris, I believe. I can picture him. I think his name was Chris. So Chris didn't have much cash on hand. He had left a job and was now ready to open this franchise, a pie shop, actually. And so with that, we were able to leverage his 401k as his equity contribution, but again, without having to use the 401k. So we did a stacked capital raise where part of it came from funding that used the 401k as collateral. And then secondly, the rest came from the SBA. All right, so again, don't want to burden you too much with details, but there's a number of things that we can do that maybe is more than what the average small business owner knows. You don't want to just go out and start talking about all this. You want to generate the client relationship first. If you're an affiliate, you feed them in, we'll take care of the rest. If you're a white label partner, which we prefer that you be because you make more money that way and you have more control of the client, then you're going to sign the client up, you submit them to us. We're going to start gathering data. Because see, it's very awkward to sit down with someone and just ask them a million questions. It's like, well, I don't know anything about you, but do you have W-2 income? Do you have any accounts receivable? How's your cash flow? Are you putting money in your business bank account? Do you take credit cards? I mean, it's just like a verbal beating, right? You don't want to do that. That's why our 4-module or 4-week process gathers the data so we can glean what they have and they don't have without feeling like we're a police interrogator asking them a million questions that doesn't feel very comfortable. So now maybe you're starting to see, oh, okay, I see. These guys have a system that's over 4 weeks or 4 modules to educate and collect data. And from the data collected, then we can start to glean from where there are some errors or omissions, things that they could do, but also where they may qualify for funding otherwise. And there's specialized lenders that focus on this. All right, well, thanks everyone. Great to talk to you again. We'll see you back on Monday morning, same time, same place. Have a good weekend. Talk to you soon. Bye.